Hi, this is a Devar Torah on Parashat Balak. It's a very interesting parsha in a number of ways. First of all, it is one of the few parshas, in fact, probably the only parsha, that's named after, first of all, not only non-Jews, but an evil person, Balak and Sipori, son of Sipori. And it starts with him becoming frightened and fighting his kingdom. They see all of the Bnei Israel on the borders of Moab. This is after they've conquered Og and Sion, the two kings. And beyond that, we also see that he makes peace with his sworn enemy, the Midianites, which raises another question. Why would he ally with them? Because even though, and this is a common theme we see throughout history, that even though they were sworn enemies, when it came to uniting against the Bnei Israel, they would forget their own grievances and combine. He then wanted to seek the help of Balaam, who was a prophet from the nations, but was a very evil individual. And despite that, he was given the powers of prophecy. One explanation that's given is because say to the nations, if we'd only had a Navi like Moshe, we would have followed you, God. So to prove that, that's one level. On a different level, everything, the way the world and the universe is constructed by God, is that for every positive and holy thing is a impure counterpart. And so Moshe was the pure prophet, the greatest of all prophets, before and since. And Balaam was the opposite. He represented the powers of impurity, powers of Tuma, and he was a great prophet. He could have achieved many things. So what did he use his powers to? Was to curse people, because as we'll see from who he was a Gilgal of, the reincarnation of, his greatest love was money and wealth and power. Now, Balak sends for him 3 times. Only on the 3rd request does he go. He promised Hashem that he will only prophesy what Hashem wants. However, what does he wind up doing? He doesn't follow that. Hashem reads that. He's riding on a donkey. The donkey, which, by the way, is appearing, has more wisdom than his master. They had a very close relationship, which gave Balaam's a power source. In any event, this donkey was not an ordinary donkey. He was not created in the 6 days of creation. He was created in what's called Bein Hashmashos, between the days. One was that at the end of the 6th day of creation, just before the first Shabbat in history began, and things that are created at that point are Malam Minateva, above nature, above the rules of development of Teva, nature as we understand it. And therefore, this donkey's whole sole purpose was to be able to communicate with Balaam, because he saw the danger. There was this fiery angel blocking his path. And Balaam, instead of being amazed when his donkey talked, started saying, if I had a sword, I'd kill you. Even then, he had no gratitude for his donkey or anything else. And that was the beginning of Balaam's downfall from Hashem, because once he was humiliated that he couldn't see the angel that initially that the donkey was able to see right away. Plus, after this incident, the donkey died. So that was a major blow for him. And finally, when he comes to Balak, he's allowed to, Balak asks him to curse the people. He says, I can only say what Hashem tells, God tells him. And after each of the 3 times, instead of cursing God and cursing the Jewish people, he comes out praising them. And at the end of the 3rd one, Balaam, seeing that Hashem wants the Jewish people praised, comes up with prophecies about what will be the end of days. And this, and again, is amazing prophecies. And then Balaam goes back to his place. Now, going back to his place can have 2 meanings. It can be geographical. He went to his home. Or Midian, or what it can mean, is he went back to his old ways. So what did he do? He told him, here's how you destroy the Jewish people. I can't do it by cursing, but the weakness of something God abhors is immorality. And he had to encourage the Midianite women to get the Jewish men into idol worship, which led to a plague that killed 14,000. Only when Pinchas finally killed Zimri, who was one of the princes of the tribe of Shimon and Cosby, did the plague stop. And next week I'll be going into that in much more detail. This is great significance to Pinchas, who, just to give a hint, will also ultimately become Eliyahu Hanavi, the great prophet, and who, interestingly enough, will show up at the end of the days to announce the coming of Mashiach ben David. In any event, that is the completion of the Parsha. There's 2 aspects I'd like to focus on today. First of all, it said that Balak saw. What was it exactly was seeing? And B, what is the relationship between Balak and Balaam? Balak was master of sorcery himself, connected to the forces of Tumah. As I'll explain in a minute, he can even see prophecy. He can even see prophecy. He can see future events. So what do you need Balaam for? And looking at the first, I'd like to quote the beginning of the Parsha. V'yira Balak ben Zippor et kol asher asav Israel lamori. And Balak, son of Zippor, saw all that Israel had done to the Amorite. And Gab Moab mifnei ha'am ma'od ki rav al kates Moab mifnei b'nei Israel. Because it was numerous and Moab was disgusted in the face of the children of Israel. And Moab said to the elders of Midian, now the congregation will lick up our entire surroundings as an ox licks up the greenery of the field. Balak, king of Zippor, son of Zippor, was king of Moab at that time. The name Zippor, by the way, means bird. It was a certain bird he worshipped that gave him powers of vision. And I'd like to discuss briefly, there's many explanations of it, but one explanation I'd like to give is, what did Balak see? And he said he had 3 types of seeing. This is the commentary to Vilna Gaon and Adaras Eliyahu. Shlosh Rios Ria. There were 3 seeings that he saw. Achad Ria Okoshis, the regular one that we all have. Sheni Ria B'chachma, wisdom. And the 3rd one, in other words, he was given a window of Chachma. And the 3rd one is Shlishi was Kisuf. Now, Kisuf is sometimes mistranslated as magic. Magic, as we understand the word today, means doing illusions, tricks to make things appear that are not really true. Here, as we know from Egypt, there were such powers, and they were manipulatable. And he had a negative, again, dark type of Nebuah prophecy using these forces. and that's why it was called Balak ben Sipor. And one of the other explanations is, what did he see? It's again the Gra. He saw that there was he was seeing both what had happened when the Canaanite tribes were to attack Sion, and what was going to happen, all the tribes, the Canaanite tribes, when people entered Eretz Israel and conquered the land. And finally, he got to see the future. He got to see a later prophecy. And the future one, he was going to see basically what was going to happen at the end of days. Well, at least not at the end of days. This is the time of David and Melech. So why did why did Balak and Balaam need each other? Now, if you look at it, this is very interesting. Both Balaam and Balak were descendants of Cain, the older son, first son of Adam Rishon and Chava. And these two children were born after Adam and Chava had committed the sin of eating of the fruit, and when the Yetzer Hara was within them, the Nakash, the snake, and therefore both Cain and Hevel were a mixture of evil and good. They have both aspects. Now, in the case of Cain, his evil, he had positive, but the evil side of him took precedence, and he rose up and killed Hevel. Now, Balak, so his main, so he had both aspects of Cain and Hevel, Balak, but what was the predominant one? The predominant one was that of Cain. He had a lot of evil of Cain, and from Hevel he had an additional dose of evil. Complementing him conversely, and complementing him was Balaam, who was mainly from Hevel, and was in fact the counter, as I said, explained, the counterpart, evil counterpart of Moshe, and he was primarily the evil of Hevel, with a little sprinkling of evil from Cain. Now, why was Balak so complimentary? Why was Balak so afraid? Because he knew that Moshe was a Gilgal of, even though he had a bit of Cain, good side of Cain, he was primarily Hevel. And how did that work? Hevel, after he was killed, became a reincarnated, was a Gilgal. His Gilgal was Seth, the third son of Adam and Chava, and ultimately he came to was another reincarnation, was Moshe. So Balak reasoned like this: if Hevel had killed, kind of killed Hevel, then it's time for retribution. And he had even witnessed this. I'm not sure he was aware of, but it did happen. That Hevel, in the hands capacity of Moshe, was killed the Mitzri, who represented the evil aspect of Cain. Now, there was another aspect of Cain also in Lavan, except he purified himself. And later on in the prophecies in this parsha, it's going to talk about how he separated from the Kenites, which meant how Yithro and his descendants separated from the evil influences and took on the positive parts of Cain. Now, if you look at the letters of Balaam and Balak, you're going to see there's a deeper connection, because the first two letters of both Balak and Balaam's names are with the Hebrew letters base Lamed. Now, if you look at the remaining letters of Balaam, and the last two letters of Balaam are Ayin Mem, two Hebrew letters, and that of Balak is Lamed Kuf. Now, if you rearrange those letters a bit, what name are you going to get? Amalek. Now, to understand, so in other words, Amalek was the first, as the Ramban explains, was the first force to corrupt the nations into believing they could defeat God and the Jewish people. Was when Amalek attacked. The nations took the wrong lesson from it and said, you see, we can successfully beat the Jews, we just have to use the right tactics. And they've been trying to destroy us ever since. However, and who was Amalek? Amalek was the grandson of Esav, and as explained, let's look at Esav and Yaakov. Esav was the evil brother, so to speak. He started off with great potential because he was a Gilgal of Cain. Now, if you take in the good aspect of Cain, he could have been very good and very proper, greater than Yaakov, but however he chose to take on and share was the evil part and didn't raise himself above that level. Yaakov, on the other hand, even though he was a descendant of Cain, took on the positive aspect. Now, therefore, this is the explanation of why Balaam and Balak had to work together. Now, one more point from this is that Balak became infuriated because he was the arch enemy of the Jews, and that Balaam was helpless to do anything. In fact, praised the Jewish people. However, if you look at the prophecies that Balaam says at the end, what it's going to show is, in fact, that the Bnei Israel, the Jewish people, through Hashem, with Hashem's help, are going to succeed, and even more so. So, in other words, Balak is seeing not only does his plan not succeed now, it's ultimately not going to succeed ever. Now, one more question. Who was Laban's ancestor? Who was his Gilgal? Another one is that Balaam's Gilgal was Laban, and you can see this, see the similar traits. Laban, to put it mildly, was extremely money and power hungry. He tried deceiving Yaakov many times, and Balaam took that on, because he says, when he explained why he couldn't curse, he said, even if you give me a house full of gold and silver, I can't curse. I can only follow Hashem's command. So we saw that for the type of avarice to ultimately destroying Balaam, because he was like Laban, because he only could see the negative side. He died at 32 when he battles with Moshe in next week's Parshas Pinchas. And there is a final note in the prophecies. He says at the end of days, we have the one reference to Mashiach, when it says in Pasuk 17 of chapter 24 that I shall see him, but not now. I shall look at him, but it is not near. A star has risen from Yaakov, and the scepter bearer has risen from Israel, which is the higher spiritual side of Yaakov. Now, these are interpreted as meaning Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David, and even Bilam, this arch evil foe, is acknowledging the ultimate triumph, as he said, not now, in the end of days. And as history is playing out, and we're doing the ultimate tikkun, and the final results are coming in, as we're in the stage of Ekov Mashiach. May this process complete itself very soon and very speedily, so that we can come to redemption. Good Shabbos and Shabbat Shalom.